What most people misunderstand about an empath is that their kindness is not weakness, their patience is not endless, their silence is not surrender, and their love is not something you can mistreat forever without consequence. People often think an empath will always stay because they forgive quickly, because they listen deeply, because they try to understand even when they are hurt, because they keep giving chances when most people would walk away. This creates a dangerous illusion. It makes others believe the empath has no limit, but every empath has a line. The difference is they do not announce it. They do not threaten to leave every week. They do not create drama to prove their pain. They do not beg for respect. They simply observe quietly. They notice every broken promise, every cold response, every selfish move, every time their loyalty was used and their heart was taken for granted. An empath usually fights for relationships longer than anyone realizes. They carry conversations. They repair tension. They excuse behavior. They blame themselves just to keep peace alive. While others are careless, the empath is trying to save what is already breaking. But something changes when pain becomes a pattern. The empath stops explaining, stops reacting, stops trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding them. And when that shift happens, it is dangerous for the person who caused it because they often do not notice it until it is too late. See, an empath does not always leave physically first. They leave emotionally. They detach in silence. They begin releasing the bond while still standing in the room. Their heart closes before the door does. And once an empath reaches that point, they rarely return the same. Because when someone who loved deeply decides to disappear, they are not acting from anger. They are acting from clarity. They finally see that love without respect becomes self-destruction. They finally understand that staying loyal to the wrong person is betrayal to themselves. Many people laugh at the empath's softness until they experience the emptiness left behind when that softness is gone. If you repeatedly wound someone whose nature was to heal, one day they stop offering healing. If you ignore someone who always understood you, one day they stop listening. If you keep taking from someone who gave freely, one day there is nothing left for you to take. Most people do not destroy an empath through one dramatic betrayal. It happens slowly, quietly, in ways that are easy to deny. That is why so many people do not realize what they are doing until the connection is already dead. It starts with inconsistency. One day warm, the next day cold. One moment loving, the next moment distant. To most people, this is confusing. To an empath, it becomes exhausting. They feel the shift immediately. They sense the energy behind the words. They notice when affection becomes convenience and attention becomes selective. Even when they stay silent, they feel every change. Then comes being taken for granted. An empath often gives naturally. They listen when no one else listens. They support when others disappear. They remember small details. They care in ways that cannot be measured. But some people get comfortable receiving that care without valuing it. They begin to expect understanding without offering any. They expect patience while giving none back. What was once appreciated becomes treated like a guarantee. That slowly wounds the empath. Another silent damage is emotional selfishness. This is when someone only reaches out when they need comfort, advice, validation, or rescue. The empath becomes a safe place, but never a priority. They become useful, not cherished. Many people do this without thinking. They unload their pain onto the empath, then vanish when the empath needs the same support in return. An empath notices that imbalance more than they admit. Then there is dishonesty. Not just lies, but half-truths, hidden motives, fake apologies, and words spoken only to avoid consequences. Empaths are deeply affected by insincerity because they connect through emotional truth. They can handle mistakes, they can handle flaws, but pretending hurts them more than failure ever could. Disrespect also arrives in small forms, interrupting them, mocking their sensitivity, ignoring their boundaries, dismissing their feelings as overreactions, speaking harshly, then blaming them for being hurt. These moments may seem minor to the person causing them, but repeated enough times, they teach the empath one painful lesson. Your heart is not safe here. And once safety is gone, love starts fading. What makes this worse is that empaths often blame themselves first. They wonder if they asked for too much, if they were too emotional, too available, too forgiving. They try to fix the problem inside themselves while the real damage continues outside them. So they give more, they explain more clearly, love more gently, stay more patiently. But when someone keeps hurting a person who is trying this hard, something eventually breaks. The empath becomes quieter. They stop sharing what they feel, stop expecting effort, stop asking for honesty, stop believing their presence matters. On the outside, they may look calm, but inside, they are grieving the relationship while still in it. That is the stage many people mistake as peace. It is not peace, it is withdrawal. By the time an empath finally leaves, the damage was done long before the goodbye. It happened in the moments no one thought counted. The cold replies, the selfish patterns, the casual disrespect, the love that was received but never protected. And the cruelest truth is this: people often miss an empath most when they realize no one else will love them that deeply again. Empaths often stay in places they should have left long ago, and people misunderstand why. They think the empath is weak, dependent, or unable to move on. But the truth is usually much deeper than that. Empaths do not stay because they enjoy pain. They stay because they see what others cannot. They see the wounded person behind the bad behavior. They notice the insecurity hiding behind arrogance. They recognize the fear beneath anger. While others judge actions only on the surface, the empath senses the hidden pain driving those actions. This is why they give chances others would never give. They believe healing is possible. When someone hurts them, the empath often thinks maybe they are struggling. Maybe they are carrying pain they never learned to express. Maybe if someone truly understands them, they will soften. So instead of walking away, the empath leans in closer. They try more patience, more communication, more compassion, and sometimes that compassion becomes a trap, because not everyone wants to heal. Some people only want to be tolerated. Some people do not want growth, they want access. They want someone who will keep forgiving them while they continue the same patterns. The empath can spend years trying to water a seed that was never planted. Another reason empaths stay is loyalty. When they care deeply. They do not treat relationships as disposable. They remember promises. They remember the good moments. They remember who someone was in the beginning, and they hold on to the hope that version will return. This is where many empaths suffer. They fall in love not only with who someone is, but with who they know that person could become. They stay committed to potential while reality keeps hurting them. They keep waiting for consistency from someone who only offers moments. They keep honoring memories while the present keeps breaking them. Empaths also stay because they often blame themselves first. When conflict happens, they reflect inward. They ask if they communicated badly, if they expected too much, if they were too sensitive. While others defend themselves instantly, the empath searches for their own faults. This self-reflection can be beautiful when balanced, but when abused, it becomes dangerous. It causes them to carry responsibility that was never theirs. They start apologizing for wounds they did not create. They start fixing problems caused by someone else's selfishness. They become the emotional worker in a relationship built by two people but maintained by one. Then there is hope. Hope keeps many empaths in painful places longer than logic ever would. They believe one honest talk could change everything. One apology could reset the bond. One difficult season could pass and reveal something better. They do not give up easily because their hearts are built to believe in transformation. But hope without evidence becomes self-betrayal. Eventually, the empath begins to understand a painful truth. Love cannot carry a relationship alone. Compassion cannot replace respect. Patience cannot create effort in someone who refuses to give it. Understanding someone's pain does not require tolerating their behavior. And when that truth finally lands, the empath changes. They stop trying to save people who enjoy sinking. They stop calling suffering loyalty. They stop confusing potential with character. They realize that staying too long was never proof of love, it was proof of how much they were willing to abandon themselves. The strongest moment in an empath's life is not when they endure more. It is when they finally decide they have endured enough. There is a moment when an empath emotionally detaches, and almost no one notices it at first. That is what makes it so powerful. It does not begin with shouting, revenge, or dramatic exits. It begins in silence. For a long time, the empath has been trying. They have explained their feelings in gentle ways. They have asked for honesty. They have given patience where others would have walked away. They have forgiven things that quietly hurt them. They have carried conversations, repaired distance, and made excuses for behavior that should have been confronted. But effort without change creates exhaustion. At some point, the empath realizes they are the only one fighting for something that two people are supposed to protect. They notice that their kindness has become expected, not valued. Their understanding has become convenient, not respected. Their presence has become normal, not appreciated. This is where detachment starts. It starts when they stop repeating themselves. The things they once tried to explain no longer feel worth explaining. They see that being clear was never the issue. The real issue was that the other person heard them, but did not care enough to change. So the empath becomes quieter. They answer shorter, they stop chasing conversations, they stop asking where the relationship is going, they stop trying to fix every strange mood and every cold shift in energy. To the other person, it may look like the empath is finally being easygoing, less emotional, less demanding, less sensitive. But that is not peace. That is disappointment turning inward. Another sign of detachment is when the empath stops reacting to things that once hurt deeply. The late replies, the broken promises, the careless tone, the emotional distance. These things used to wound them because they still believed the connection could improve. Now they feel strangely calm, not because the pain disappeared, because expectation disappeared. And once expectation dies, attachment begins to die with it. The empath also starts reclaiming energy. They invest more into themselves. They think more clearly. They spend less time waiting and more time rebuilding their own inner world. They laugh without needing validation. They enjoy moments that have nothing to do with the person draining them. Their spirit slowly returns the moment they stop feeding what was starving them. This phase is dangerous for the one who took them for granted because they often mistake silence for permanence. They assume the empath will always stay because they are still physically present. They believe there is still time because no final goodbye has happened. But emotionally, the goodbye has already begun. Once an empath reaches this stage, begging later rarely works. Sudden effort feels suspicious. Last-minute promises feel empty. Attention that comes only after distance feels too late. The empath is no longer listening with wounded hope. They are listening with clarity, and clarity changes everything. They can now see the pattern without excuses. They can see how much of the relationship was sustained by their own heart. They can see how often they accepted crumbs because they remembered a feast that no longer existed. So when they finally leave, people are shocked. They say it happened suddenly. They say the empath changed. They say they never saw it coming. But the truth is, they were watching the final chapter and mistook it for another chance. Because an empath's real exit does not happen when they walk away. It happens the day they stop believing you will ever become who you promised to be. When an empath disappears, the loss feels heavier than ordinary loss because what leaves is more than a person. What leaves is an emotional experience most people do not know how to replace. Many people only understand value after absence. While the empath is present, their care feels natural. Their support feels normal. Their patience feels expected. Their ability to calm tension, listen deeply, and notice unspoken pain becomes part of everyday life. It blends into the background like air, always there, rarely acknowledged. But when they are gone, the silence changes shape. Suddenly, there is no one reading the room and softening conflict before it grows. No one sensing pain behind anger. No one checking in without being asked. No one remembering the details everyone else forgets. No one offering comfort without keeping score. The emotional warmth that once held everything together is removed, and people feel the cold immediately. That is why the loss feels so different. An empath gives things that are hard to measure. They give presence. They give emotional safety. They make others feel seen in moments when the world feels indifferent. They listen in a way that helps people hear themselves. They often understand feelings others cannot even explain. Most people do not realize how rare that is. There are many people who can talk, fewer who can listen, many who can stay during good times, fewer who stay during confusion, failure, fear, and shame, many who want connection when it benefits them, fewer who care when there is nothing to gain. Empaths often love in those invisible spaces. So when they leave, the emptiness is not dramatic at first. It is subtle. It appears in the moments where support used to be automatic, in the nights when no one checks in the stressful days when no one notices something is wrong, in conversations that feel shallow after being used to depth. The person who lost them may try to replace them quickly. They may surround themselves with attention, distractions, new faces, louder personalities, but attention is not the same as understanding. Company is not the same as connection. Noise is not the same as peace. That realization hits later. Another reason the loss feels heavy is because empaths often accepted parts of people others would reject. They saw broken pieces and did not run. They saw insecurity and responded with gentleness. They saw flaws and still made room for humanity. When they are gone, people are often forced to face themselves without the mirror of compassion that once softened everything. And self-confrontation can feel brutal. Some losses hurt because you lost access. This loss hurts because you lost someone who cared beyond convenience. There is also regret attached to losing an empath. Regret has weight. People replay moments they were dismissive, selfish, careless, unavailable. They remember chances they assumed would return. They remember loyalty they treated casually. They remember kindness they answered with neglect. That memory becomes its own punishment. Because deep down, they know the empath did not leave over one mistake. They left after many moments that seemed small to everyone except the one carrying them. When an empath leaves, the room still looks the same. Life may continue normally on the outside, but something essential is missing underneath it all. And the heaviest losses are always the ones people thought they could afford. What people regret after losing someone who loved them deeply is rarely the breakup itself. It is the delayed understanding of what they had in their hands and how carelessly they treated it. At first, many people feel confident after an empath leaves. They tell themselves it was not a big loss. They assume someone else will come along. They distract themselves with pride, attention, or temporary freedom. Because when something valuable has always been available, the mind can mistake it as common. But time exposes truth. They begin noticing that not everyone is patient when they are difficult. Not everyone listens without judgment. Not everyone sees pain hidden behind attitude. Not everyone forgives mistakes while still encouraging growth. What once felt ordinary starts to look rare. That is when regret begins. They regret the messages they ignored because they assumed the empath would text again. They regret the cold replies given to warm intentions. They regret the times they chose ego over honesty, silence over accountability, selfishness over effort. They remember moments where a small act of care could have changed everything, but they were too distracted, too proud, or too sure the empath would stay. Many regret using the empath as emotional shelter while offering no shelter in return. They came when they needed comfort. They called when life hurt. They leaned on someone who always made space for them. But when the empath needed reassurance, support, or consistency, they were absent. They took healing without learning how to heal back. That imbalance feels different once the source is gone. Some regret how they mocked sensitivity. They called the empath dramatic for noticing what was wrong. They called them needy for asking for clarity. They called them emotional for reacting to disrespect. Later, they realized the empath was not difficult. They were aware. They were asking for the minimum while giving the maximum. Others regret confusing calmness with weakness. Because empaths often speak gently, people assume they can be pushed endlessly. They mistake kindness for low standards. They believe a soft heart has no boundaries. Then one day, the empath leaves quietly, completely, and without returning. That silence teaches what words could not. There is also regret in realizing how much of life was made easier by the empath's presence. The peaceful talks, the emotional depth, the sense of being understood without needing to explain everything, the comfort of knowing someone genuinely cared. These things often become visible only after absence, and absence can be brutally clear. Some people try to return once they feel the loss. They offer promises, apologies, sudden effort, but what they often do not understand is that the empath did not leave because love ended quickly. They left because love was slowly damaged for too long. By the time regret arrives, the empath has usually already healed in silence. They have learned to choose peace over potential. They have stopped romanticizing pain. They have realized that loving deeply should never require losing themselves. And that becomes the hardest part for the person left behind. Not that they lost someone good, but that they lost someone good who would have stayed if only they had treated them right.